the devotees a minute or two to join us. And today we're going to have our class and Abhishek. Hopefully the devotees of North Carolina will join us. I don't see anyone's face. Everyone is blocking their face. I see Aditya, Jaya, Ayush, Iskon, Sundari. Okay, it's good to see everybody's face. I felt lonely without seeing everyone's face.
Thank you so much.
Haribo. So we're going to start in a minute or two. Just waiting for everyone to join us here and then also on Facebook. We're on Facebook too, my Facebook page too. As you see, I'm in Fiji. You can see from my background here. It's actually a video, but this is where I'm staying anyway. I took a video 2 mornings ago, and I'm using that as a backdrop. So every morning I go for a morning walk on the beach here. So all good. Oh, Veda, good to see you, Veda. And wow, Sundarisha, Ayush, Iskon, Ranaradhika, Kirtada Sundari, Jet. Just give it another minute or two, and we'll start. I thought we'd get a lot more people than this, but I guess we're still like 2 minutes early. So this is Navami, and we are broadcasting on Zoom, on Facebook simultaneously.
Hare Krishna Gurudev, we're here in the temple with Radha Golokananda.
Oh, that's nice.
They're gonna excuse
I see
us.
Jaga is also on, but he's not broadcasting video yet. I guess he can do that later when we do the Abhishek. Just let a few more people join here. Oh, Krishna Kumari, that's very nice. Krishna Kumari, well this is, whoops, she left. Krishna Kumari is actually from the West Coast, from the state of Washington. I think it's this my disciple Krishna Kumari is connecting. Okay. Anyone else? Hey, that's Krishna Kumari. I can see her. It's good to see you. Okay, we got a whole bunch of people joining now. Okay, we're going to start. Yeah, it's exactly 6 o'clock your time, and right now it is 10 o'clock my time in the morning. The day is just starting, so I got several classes I'm going to be giving today on the internet, and this is the first of many for different places in the world. Oh, you even have Mother Tulsi. That's interesting. So we got people from, actually got some people from Fiji. Hare Purusha is from Fiji. Okay, let's start. So we'll start chanting Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Raghupati Raghava Rajaram, Patita Pavana Sita Ram. And I'm going to put you all on mute so I can't hear you right now, because having back and forth kirtans on Zoom does not work very well because of the delay. So at least you'll hear me chanting, and you can chant in your own homes. You can chant in response, except I won't be able to hear you, unfortunately, but I'll be able to see if you're chanting, and I'll be able to see if you're falling asleep too. So I guess that's why some people didn't put their cameras on, so they could do all sorts of things instead of listening. Okay, we will start. Sita Ram, Jaya Sita Ram, 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 Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Shri Ram, Jaya Ram, Jaya Jaya Ram, Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Shri Ram, Jaya Ram, Jaya Ram, Raghupati Raghava Rajaram, Patita Pavana Sitaram, Raghupati Radhava Rajaram, Patita Pavana Sitaram, Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram, 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 Sita Ram Jaya Sita 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 Ram, Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram, Patita Pavana Sita Ram, Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram, Patita Pavana Sita Ram, Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram, Shri Ram Jaya Ram Jaya Jaya Ram, Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram, Shri Ram Jaya Ram Jaya Jaya Ram, Sita Ram Jaya Sita 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 Ram, Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jaya Ram, Shri Ram Jaya Ram Jaya Jaya Ram, Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jaya Ram, Shri Ram Jaya Ram Jaya Jaya Ram, Sita Ram Jaya Sita 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 Ram, Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram, Shri Ram Jaya Ram Jaya Jaya Ram, Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jaya Ram, Shri Ram Jaya Ram Jaya Jaya Ram, Sita Ram Jaya Sita 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 Ram, Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram, Patita Pavana Sita Ram, Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram, Patita Pavana Sita Ram, Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jaya Ram, Shri Ram Jaya Ram Jaya Jaya Ram, Shri Ram Jaya Ram Jaya Jaya Ram, Shri Ram Jaya Ram Jaya Jaya Ram, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Sita Ram, Jaya Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Jaya Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Jaya Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Jaya Sita Ram. Raghupati Raghava Rajaram, Patita Pavana Sita Ram. Raghupati Raghava Rajaram, Patita Pavana Sita Ram. Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram, Shri Ram Jaya Ram Jaya Jaya Ram. Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram, Shri Ram Jaya Ram Jaya Jaya Ram. Ramchandra Bhagavan Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Haribol. All glories the assembled devotees, all glories the assembled devotees, all glories the assembled devotees. All glories to His divine grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay, we got 36 people here on Zoom and about 15 people on Facebook right now. So welcome to the Nugaloka program for Ram Navami, for those of you who first joined us. And we're not at Nugaloka except in our hearts. We are in Fiji. And what you see here are the pictures of our deities in Fiji, in Suva, Sita Ram, Lakshman, and Hanuman. I think it may be reversed in what you're all seeing. Yeah, it's reversed in what you're all seeing. I should put the right picture because for me it's reversed. Hold on one second so you see a bona fide picture of Sita Ram, Lakshman, and Hanuman. This will take 1 second. All right, just give me 1 second. There you go, that'll be better. Yeah, that's better. All right, yeah. Anyway, maybe it's better, maybe it's not. Yeah. Okay, so for those of you who are joining us, Ditchin Narayan speaking. You wanted to say something?
I was going to say if you could again mute the lines because few lines are not muted.
Okay. Okay, I'll mute. Whoops. Everybody mute your lines. I'm not really noticing it right now because I have my whole speaker system on. Okay, everybody go to your particular windows and please mute. I don't see who is not muted. Sadhvi Radha, please mute. Sadhvi Radha, please mute. Or else I have to remove you. I don't have control of Sadhvi Radha. The other ones I have control of. Okay, let's see. Well, we got a lot of people here. Okay, anybody who's online, please mute. That's better. So, here we go. Okay, I'll leave this on so I can hear in case someone doesn't mute. So today we are celebrating Ram Navami, the glorious appearance of Lord Ramchandra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You will need permission to share my screen for Abhishek. Oh. I want you to have a camera, Jagat, I want you to have a camera directly on you, not sharing the screen. Because it's going to be too much. If I give you permission, I give everybody permission. Then I have to give everybody permission and then we get up trouble. So I need you to be in the temple room doing a separate broadcast when we do the Abhishek, Jagat. Okay. So on that happy note, a little technical glitches there. So on that happy note, we are celebrating Ram Navami in Nuku'alofa. I'm in Fiji right now, and I'm not at the temple. We're all on lockdown, just as many of you are. And we're going to speak about Lord Ramchandra today. And we've been speaking about Lord Ram through for the last few days. However, today I thought we'd do something a little bit different. We'd speak about the different lessons we can learn from the Ramayana. So, Om Gana Timidanda Shah Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Meditam Yena Tasmai Shigurave Namaha. So the lessons we can learn from the Ramayana. And we're going to discuss what the Ramayana is, first of all. The Ramayana, of course, is the Valmiki Ramayana, is the authorized literature that was spoken by Valmiki, the sage Valmiki, on Lord Ram's pastimes. There's many other Ramayanas in India. Those of you who are from North India are familiar with the Tulsidas Ramayana, which is Ramacharitamanasas. In South India, you have Ramayans in every place in South India, in different languages. But the original Ramayana, the authorized Ramayana from which all the other Ramayans came from, is the Valmiki Ramayana. And the Valmiki Ramayana is composed of 24,000 verses and 500 cantos. It's the world's largest epic poem, far larger than the Iliad and the Odyssey, or any of the Western literatures that some of you may be familiar with. So we're going to be making reference to the Valmiki Ramayana. I know that a lot of you know stories that are sometimes like folk tales or stories from different Ramayans, but I tried to be as authorized as possible concerning the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And I have to really know the sources, because this is the principle of parampara. Parampara means that if you're going to speak some subject matter, particularly spiritual subject matters, you better know where the information comes from. Because otherwise, it could be coming from some other source that is not bona fide. Just like if you go around Vrindavan, there's so many stories you hear about Krishna, and you don't really know which is a bona fide story, which is not a bona fide story, unless they have scriptural or shastric reference. So here's the lessons. I noted down this morning the different lessons we can learn from the Ramayana. So to me, the most important lesson of the Ramayana is the importance of the holy name. Because the whole Ramayana was composed because of the holy name of Ram. And not only the holy name of Ram chanted deliberately, but the holy name of Ram chanted in Namavash, which actually became Shudanam. And of course, there's a story for each of these philosophical points that I'll be making. So the story is as follows, that there was this terrible dacoit. And this terrible dacoit's name was Lohar, and he was basically robbing everybody, killing people, taking their money. And what happened is, once upon a time, he approached the Sapta Rishis who were walking down the path, and he tried to rob them. And when he tried to rob them, they asked him a simple question. They said, "Do you understand the law of karma?" And they said, or he said, of course, "I understand," because he was actually a cultured dacoit. He said, "I understand the law of karma, and I understand everything I'm doing is very bad and will have a bad reaction. But how else am I going to maintain my family?" And the Saptarishi said, "We understand this, but do you think your family will consent to accepting some of your sinful activities?" And he said, "Of course, they love me like anything." And he went back to the family after the Saptarishis told him to ask the family members if they would accept his sinful reactions. He went back and he asked them, "Would you accept my sinful reactions?" And they said, beginning with the wife, "No. Your business, my dear husband, is to make money for me. And then he went to his son, his little son, and he said to his son, would you accept my sinful reactions? And the son, put that back in a different backdrop, which is more soothing. So the son said, no, Dad, your business is to get me this iPhone. He didn't say that, of course, but that's it. That's sort of like a modern version of the story. And then he realized that his family really loved him for his money. He went back to the Saptarishis and said, what should I do? And the Saptarishis basically said, chant the names of Ram. And he said, I'm too sinful to chant the names of Ram. So they said, well, instead you can chant this nice mantra, which is more akin to your psychophysical nature. You can chant Mara, 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 which means death. And so he chanted Mara, Mara, Mara. And Mara, Mara, Mara became Ram, Ram, Ram after he was chanting it a few times. Mara, 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 Ram, 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 Ram. And because of that chanting, with determination, because he was engaged, Tivrena Bhakti Yogini Ajeta Purusham Param, because he was engaged in chanting with determination, basically, he lost consciousness of all external things and was simply absorbed in the pastimes of Ram. Simply by chanting Namabhasa in the beginning, but later on it became transformed to Shuddhanam. And because of that chanting and being absorbed in the chanting, he didn't even notice that there was an anthill growing around him. And later on, when the Saptarishis, the 7 great sages, came, they heard an anthill chanting Ram, 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 Ram. And the Saptarishis understood it was Valmiki. Valmiki, actually, the name means the anthill sage. So then they uncovered him from the anthill and they blessed him with pure Krishna consciousness, so Ram consciousness. Later on, he got the instruction from his 2 gurus, Narada Muni and Lord Rama, to compose the Valmiki Ramayana. So that's one lesson we learned from Ram's pastimes, is the power of Ram's name. I know that there's some stories about Hanuman and that people talk about that in which they attempt to prove that Ram Nam is more powerful than Ram. But that is not a bona fide story, so I'm not going to tell it. Ram and Ram are non-different. If you chant the names of Ram, Ram will be there before you. That is the non-different nature of the Lord and his holy names. Namachintamani Krishnas Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purnashuddha Nitya Vilatvam Namanamino. The Lord and his name are non-different. The name is the same as the Lord. So that's one thing we can learn. Of course, there's other stories in the Bhagavatam, such as the Ajamil story that prove the same point. Very important lesson. For me, that's the most important lesson of the Ramayana. Another important lesson, philosophical point, or lesson, practical lesson, we're trying to get practical lessons from the Ramayana, is the lesson of loyalty. Now, we find this particular quality very hard to come across in this day and age. As we know, this is the age of Kali. And people are not loyal to each other. You have relationships break up one after the other. Friendships break up. Marriages break up. Politicians promise you something. Of course, they don't break up. They're already broken up. But politicians promise you something, and they don't deliver. They're just interested in their own aggrandizement. So this is a problem. But in the Ramayana, we find very, very strong relationships. And these relationships are not just relationships. They're based on love. You know, we're trying to understand what love is. In the material realm, this word love is bandied about quite often. Like, you know, I love a Tesla, I love pizza, I love this, I love that, or I love your hairdo. Of course, I don't have a hairdo, but in any case, people use this word love without understanding. It's not the same as prema. It's exactly, probably the opposite. Because love in the material world means, I scratch your back, you scratch my back. Some sort of a business deal. But real love means that one is dedicated to the welfare of the person whom you love, not only Krishna, but anyone who you actually love, and ready to sacrifice your own self-interests of a particular individual. So we find this even amongst the demons in the Ramayana. For example, you have Indrajit. Indrajit, of course, is Ravan's son, his chief son, and he's ready to go to battle, to sacrifice himself for the good of Ravan, even when he understands who Lakshman and Ram are. He understands. He actually says in the Ramayana, Sakshad Vishnu, that in other words, Ram is God. Now, who's going to fight God? But he's so loyal to his father, and he knows he's going to get killed. And still he goes to fight him. And similarly, amongst the Rakshasas, you find who? Kumbhakarna, the brother of Ravan. And he is also ready to sacrifice himself. He's fully aware of who Ram is. He's telling Ravan to give back Sita Devi, and Ravan refuses. And Ravan basically, he just implores him, saying that you're my brother, you should be loyal, you should do what I say. Yet, Kumbhakarna actually goes back and he fights with Ram. I mean, it's amazing. Simply amazing. So, anyway, so these are some of the stories. Actually, let's talk about stories amongst Ram and his brothers. That's even more interesting. I mean, we even gave the example of demons. But as far as Ram and his brothers, you have, of course, Lakshman. Someone turned down your sound. So, Lakshman is actually so loyal to Ram that he's ready to kill Dasaratha or imprison Dasaratha, his own father. I mean, he loves him so much. Whoops. Okay, I'll mute you. I just muted you. So, he loves him so much that he's willing to imprison his own father, to rebel against his own father, to do a coup against the kingdom. That's how much he loves Ram. Amazing, amazing devotion. And he just follows Ram. And the whole time, there's stories in the Ramayana that the whole time he was in the forest, he basically didn't sleep. I know that some people say he didn't eat either, but that's not there in the Valmiki Ramayana. In the Valmiki Ramayana, it mentions that he didn't sleep for 4 years because every night when Ram and Lakshman were, Ram and Sita were sleeping, he had to stay awake to guard them. So here's such amazing devotion. And then what to speak of Bharat, the other brother. Of course, you have 2 other brothers of Ram. That's Bharat and Lakshman. What to speak of Bharat, that when he heard that Ram had left or been exiled because at the behest of his mother, Kaikeyi, he vowed to search for Ram and bring Ram back. So most of the times you have these brothers, very happy to have my brother's kingdom. I mean, look at the example of Dhritarashtra. When Dhritarashtra found out that his brother Pandu went to the forest to be with his wives, and he had controlled the kingdom for some time, he was in ecstasy. He was in ecstasy, and he treated his brother's sons like dirt. I mean, he wanted to kill his brother's sons so that his sons could take over the kingdom. So you contrast that with Bharat, who went out to search for Ram. Not only did he go out to search for Ram, but in the Valmiki Ramayana, it's described that he constructed roads to where Ram was In other words, big roads, and had elephants and soldiers, and everybody go out to see or get Ram back. And when he was unable to convince Ram to come back, he still didn't take over the kingdom because he loved Ram so much. What he did is he installed the shoes of Ram as the king or the emperor, and he worshipped those shoes. And in order not to be better than Ram, he actually slept under the earth. In other words, Ram was sleeping on the earth because he had taken Vanavas. He had gone to the forest, and he was sleeping on the earth because that was the order of his father. And Bart, he worshipped the shoes of Ram as the king. And he slept under the earth so as not to sleep equally on the equal position as Ram or better position as Ram. Amazing, amazing devotion we find there. So this is another lesson we can learn from the Ramayana. So the Ramayana is not just there as a bunch of stories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which are attractive and something that we can meditate on and connect with. Everything the Lord does as Ram is meant to teach us something. Ram is known, of course, and his brothers are like Maryada Purushottam, which means that they are the topmost example of etiquette, of good behavior, morality, human behavior. So we need to meditate on Ram's example, the example of his brothers, and the example even of some of the demons. Not all the examples of the demons. I mean, there's some examples of Ram that we do not want you to follow, such as kidnapping others' wives. So, anyway, that's an interesting thing. But there are wonderful examples here. I mean, I find the Ramayana much more, let's say, exemplary than Krishna's pastimes. I mean, I love Krishna's pastimes. He's God. He can do whatever he wants. But as far as the example Krishna sets, I don't recommend those examples for anybody. I don't recommend that you go around pinching other people's babies. I don't recommend that you go around stealing butter. I don't recommend that you go around kidnapping girls that you want to get married to. I don't recommend you marry 16,108 wives. Of course, you'd probably be dead after the third wife. So, Krishna's example is not for us. But Ram is Maryada Purushottam, so we should really understand how to apply his teachings. Okay, that's another lesson. I have a whole list. We won't get through them all today, of course, because we only have about 25 minutes left. What we're going to do at the end of this, we're going to give Aditya Narayan a little time to ask people if they want to help with the Abhishek, which we're going to be televising here, and to get the blessings of Radha Golokananda and Sri Sri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman. Later on, we're going to be doing an Abhishek here in Fiji, but I think it's going to be the middle of the night for most of you. It's going to be at, let's see, tonight it's going to be at 6 o'clock Fiji time, which is, well, not too bad for all of you, about 4 o'clock in the morning the next morning. No, it's not. It's going to be at 2 o'clock in the morning. So I don't advise you join unless you really want to. And today we're also going to be taking Lord Ram, Sitaram, Lakshman, Hanuman to the beach to bathe them in the ocean. So we'll have videos posted of that. Not only, we're not going to do that live, but we're going to post videos of that on my Facebook page so you can watch that later on. Okay, getting on with the lessons we learned. Another one is Dharma. In other words, the duty of a king or a leader. Now, as I said, this doesn't only apply to Ram, doesn't only apply to kings, doesn't only apply to presidents. It applies to anyone who has dominion over other living entities. And, of course, Prabhupada would often comment that those who are in charge of a country or a particular locale are in charge of all the praja, those who are born there, which means all living entities. Now, just a side note, one of the material causes, as well as the spiritual or the karmic cause of the present crisis that we're experiencing right now, is that the leaders of society are exploiting, are abusing the entities within their kingdoms. And we're talking about animals right now. Human beings are being abused in a different way. But the animals are being abused, and the material cause, as well as the dharmic, karmic cause, is the abuse of animals. Try to remember that. If any of you are interested in knowing about that, I could send you some studies about these things, how all these, 99% of these viruses come through the abuse, or from the abuse of animals, or the eating of animals, or raising of animals for slaughter. Okay, getting on with the Ramayana. So, the ideal king considers all the living entities within his kingdom to be of equal importance, not only the human beings. So, there's two stories I'll tell in that regard. One is the famous story of sending Sita Devi away when there was some question about her. And not that she had any questionable behavior, but basically whoops, someone else is echoing me. So basically Ram took the importance of the care of citizens as more important than his own personal happiness. That's one story. But even another story that strikes me even more deeply is a story of Ram giving importance to a dog. Once upon a time, we'll tell the story very quickly. Once upon a time, this is when Ram was in charge of Ayodhya after he had defeated Ravan and been very, very successful in that regard. He was sitting in his palace, and there was a dog barking at the gate or the door of the palace. And as the dog was barking at the door of the palace, Ram and some of these people heard it, and Ram sent Lakshman to see what was the problem. Even the dogs were happy. All living entities were happy, and the weather was very nice all the time. And there was no coronavirus in Ramraj. In fact, if there was a disease, it was attributed to someone doing some sinful activity in the kingdom. And then Ram stopped it immediately. I'm not going to tell the story about that Shudra, because someone asked me not to tell that story during the class. But anyway, it was attributable to someone doing something really bad within the kingdom. So therefore, the dog had equal rights with human beings. Getting back to the story. And Lakshman said to Ram, the dog wants to see you. I guess dogs could talk in those days. And all right. And so the dog was brought before Ram, and Ram said, what's the problem, Mr. Dog? And the dog said, there's a big problem. I've come to complain. A Brahmin was beating me. And Ram said, this is very bad. Even dogs should not be beaten. And then Ram said, what was the Brahmin's name? And the dog said, whatever the Brahmin's name was. I forget, Mr. Brahmin. So they called for the Mr. Brahmin. Mr. Brahmin came, and Mr. Brahmin was questioned by Ram, did you beat this dog? And the Brahmin said, yes, I beat the dog. But the reason is, everybody has an excuse for bad behavior. I did this, but I'm not responsible. And Ram said, it's still bad. You need to be punished if you beat a dog. So they went around the room and tried to figure out what was the appropriate punishment. Then nobody could figure it out. What is the punishment for beating a dog? Maybe he should get beaten, whatever. And finally the dog said, I have an idea. Would you be willing to listen? And Ram said, yes. And the dog said, you should make him in charge of the mandir. And everyone was shocked. Why should this Brahmin be in charge of a mandir? That's actually a benediction. He's getting a higher position. He's going to make more money. And everyone was shocked. And Ram said, well, if you don't understand the reason, ask the dog. And the dog replied, Dog Uvacha, the reason is, in my last life, I was in charge of the mandir and I had to take everyone's sinful activities because I wasn't such a good manager. Therefore, the result is I became a dog in this life, so the same thing's going to happen to that Brahmin. So, interesting story, but a very true, instructive story. And so, in other words, we are responsible for those people under us. We are responsible for all living entities, not only your family, your children. You are responsible for every living entity you come in touch with and not abusing, mistreating any living entity. So this is actually Dharma. So that's another lesson to be learned. As I said, we're not going to get through all the lessons. Another lesson is the potency of spiritual separation. In Sanskrit, spiritual separation is called Vipralamba. And this is described by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Shikshashtika prayers. Yugayitam nimishena chakshusha pravashayitam shunyayitam jagat sarvam govinda vidahename. So, oh, you're hearing two voices? That's really strange. Are you all here? Ditcher, are you hearing two voices when I'm speaking?
No, Maharaj, it's clear.
Yeah, just the people in Fiji, because you're probably watching on Facebook too at the same time. So you could hear me all right, Ditcher, right?
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay, good, okay. That's just the devotees. Some people are mentioning that. It's kind of strange. Oh, and maybe their connection, see where your microphone is actually feeding into your speaker. So what I would do is turn off your microphone if that's the case, because in the older computers it does that. Or if you're ever having any trouble, you could watch me on Facebook. My Facebook page, BK Goswami Das, if you can't hear me properly. But this is a good way to interact. So getting on with the story. So Vipralamba, we're talking about Vipralamba or separation. Lord Chaitanya describes this in his famous prayer, Jugayitam Nimishena, Chakshusha Pravashayitam, Sunyayitam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Vidahename. Though Krishna, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. And I'm feeling all like this whole world is vacant in your absence. So this particular mood of a devotee or of a spiritualist is very important in cultivation of the ultimate realization. In the material realm, and some of you heard me speak about this before, in the material realm, basically, we are always separated. Even if you're together physically with someone, there's no real meeting of minds because you're just thinking you're the body. Like if you got two hands holding each other, you're still separated because you're not together, you're not in the same wavelength. Just like you may have two radios, or one radio, one transmitter, and one receiver, and they're in different wavelengths. The receiver and transmitter can be this close together, but it's not going to do any good because they have to be tuned to the same wavelength. So in Krishna consciousness, we can be tuned to the same wavelength and actually have connection, real spiritual connection with each other. This is an extremely important point. So in the process of executing Krishna consciousness, we cultivate this mood of separation from Krishna. And of course, in the Ramayana, getting back to the Ramayana, which we're talking about today, we have Ram and Sita being separated for a long period of time. In fact, we hear Ram crying out after Sita is taken away and Ram realizes that plaintively. He's ready basically to destroy the universe, feeling separation from Sita. He's talking to the birds, he's talking to the trees, he's talking to the deer, he's talking to the clouds. I mean, it's almost like a madman. And he has to be pacified by Lakshman. And even when he goes later on to see the monkeys, and the Pampa Lake is there, and it's very beautiful, and it's springtime, everything reminds him of Sita Devi. And then you have Sita Devi, on the other hand. Of course, we understand it's Maya Sita, but that's a different aspect of the story. She's being tortured by Ravan, and she's simply remembering Ram, chanting Ram's name the whole time. So there's this intense separation between Sita and Ram. And so one may question, what kind of pastime is this that there's so much suffering? Well, let me explain it on a different level. When they're feeling this great separation, they're connected. Sita's never disconnected from Ram. Ram is never disconnected from Sita because of the intensity of that separation. The mood of separation, or the remembrance of one's beloved on the spiritual platform, is non-different from one's beloved. There's connection there, which is really amazing. And that also works with the disciple and guru relationship. Like Prabhupada said, the disciple and the guru are never actually separated. If the disciple is serving, and of course if the guru is bona fide, is a big if right there. So they're never actually separated, they're always together. And Prabhupada was one time asked by someone, do you ever feel intense separation from your spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur? And Prabhupada replied, that question you do not need to ask. And in other words, Prabhupada was indicating that he was feeling this mood of separation towards Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur. So that's the interesting thing about the spiritual connection, that even what appears to be misery, intense separation, longing, is actually the greatest ecstasy. And it's hard to explain that from a material point of view. But this is an important lesson for us. Because as we're performing spiritual life, if we cultivate this mood, we're directly with Krishna. If we're chanting the holy names, then we are with Krishna, 100%. Of course, the holy names are Krishna, but our consciousness is not focused. So we focus our consciousness by intense longing. Of course, that's called lalyan. Lalyan means basically greed. But greed is there as intense longing. In the material realm, if we're greedy for something, that pulls us away from spiritual life. But in the spiritual realm, if we're greedy for something, it connects us with Krishna. It's such a beautiful thought. So therefore, not only in Ram's pastimes, but in the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you have these instances of separation. I mean, Lord Chaitanya taking sannyas when he was very young. You have the story of Srinivasacharya feeling separation from the Goswamis in Vrindavan. I don't have time to tell that story. Some other time we'll tell that story. And then in Krishna's pastimes, Krishna left Vrindavan when he was 16 years old. Some acharyas say 12, Prabhupada said 16. When he was 16 years old, he left Vrindavan. And then after that, Krishna was on the planet for over 125 years, and the residents of Vrindavan were feeling such intense mood of separation because Krishna was not manifest before them. He was there. He never leaves Vrindavan. It's called the aprakratit pastimes, the unmanifest pastimes. But they were connected with Krishna in spite of that mood or the external manifestation of separation. And another instance of separation in the Ramayana is the separation that Dasarath was feeling towards Ram when Ram went into exile for 14 years. And of course we know this was actually due he had from Shaman Kumar's parents, but that's a story, another story. that he was cursed to feel that separation. So you may say, why was he suffering like that? Why was he cursed? Because that brought him closer to Ram. It's really hard to describe how separation and the intense mood of separation on the spiritual platform is the highest ecstasy, if one connects in that way. Just like when Prabhupada commented, when the disciple passes away, when the guru passes away, the disciple should feel that mood of intense separation and serve the mission of the guru. That's the manifestation of the disciple feeling that mood of separation. Okay. Then, let's see, I got a few more. We only have about 7 or 8 more minutes until we end, and then we're going to have the Abhishek. So, okay. So, another interesting lesson we find in the Ramayana is how the pastimes of Ram are eternal. Now, this is directly illustrated by a story that's told in the Ramayana and also in the Puranas, how the pastimes of Ram are or were known even before Lord Rama appeared. And we'll tell that story very briefly. Many millions of years before Rama appeared, we had one of the original personalities in Ram's dynasty, the sun god, because Rama appeared in the sun dynasty, the Surya dynasty, whereas Krishna appeared in the moon dynasty. So one of the original personalities is Vivaswan, the sun god, and Vivaswan, Manu, Ikshvaku, which you're all familiar with due to the Bhagavad Gita verses. So Vivaswan had deities of Sita and Ram. It's quite amazing. This is millions of years before Ram appeared. He had deities of Sita and Ram. So what did he do with those deities? He worshipped them and he passed them down, Manu, Ikshvaku, etc., through what's called this, seminal disciplic succession, but it was a disciplic succession. So he passed it down through to his son, who passed it down to his son, these deities, and they were continuing, because the pastimes of Sita and Ram keep occurring once in a day of Lord Brahma, like the pastimes of Krishna appear once in a day of Lord Brahma on a routine schedule. So these deities were passed down all the way down to Ram. And Ram had these deities of himself and Sita. And of course, Ram, being the perfect example of etiquette, Maryada, Purushottam, he didn't want to worship his own deity. That's really not appropriate. Just like even me, when I do deity worship and I'm at someone's home and they have a picture of me, I don't offer a flower to myself. It would be highly inappropriate. Or offer incense. Of course, I don't even like incense. But I don't even offer anything to myself. It'd be self-worship is actually very bad. So anyway, so that deity, those deities were given to Ram. Ram put them in a closet. And when they were in the closet, he wasn't worshiping them. Then there was a problem in his kingdom, because there was one Brahmin who was so devoted to Ram that he would not eat that day until he had seen Ram. And when Ram heard about that, there was a problem because Ram used to go out sometimes in the forest, etc. And when the Brahmin heard about this, or when Ram heard about this, he thought, well, I should give him the deities. So he opened his closet, took out the deities, gave them to the Brahmin. And the Brahmin started worshiping the deities, and that way he could eat at any time, day or night. The Brahmin was in ecstasy. So then that Brahmin, after some time, gave those deities to Hanuman. And then, after some time, those deities were eventually given to Madhvacharya. Some of you heard of Madhvacharya in Udupi, and those deities are still there in Udupi. Of course, there's a deity of dancing Gopal in Udupi, and there's also the deities of Sita and Ram that were worshipped by Hanuman. Very, very nice story. So that's proof. that the pastimes of the Lord are Nitya Lila. They're not something that just happen, whenever in the Treta Yuga, but there's something that happen again and again, as are the pastimes of Krishna, the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Of course, there is always some variety in these particular pastimes. And we'll end with we have 2.5 minutes. We'll end with one story, not story, but actually one other philosophical or practical point. And this particular point is about everybody's favorite enemy, lust. Kama rupena kontya dushprena lenacha. So another thing we can learn from the Ramayana is how lust steals one's intelligence. Now, several stories on that. One story, of course, is the story of Ravan. Ravan was warned by Marich. See, the first time he wanted to go and kidnap Sita Devi, Uncle Marich, who was one of the two, Marich and Sabahu, Marich got thrown in the ocean by Ram when Ram fired his arrows, and Marich was also defeated by Ram when Marich took the form of an 8-legged beast and tried to attack Ram. So this Marich, who used to be or was a Rakshasa and now had taken sannyas because he was so afraid of Ram, advised Ravan, don't attack Ram. Don't attack him. And at that point, Ravan listened to some good advice because he wasn't extremely absorbed in being lusty towards Sita. But then later on, his beloved sister, Surpanaka, and Surpanaka actually hated Ravan. This is an inside story, because Ravan had killed Surpanaka's husband. Surpanaka's husband was in charge of the netherworlds. Netherworlds means Brazil. In case you don't know, it's Brazil. But Ravan, because you drill a hole through the earth, you get to Brazil. So Ravana killed Surpanaka's husband, who was actually in charge of Brazil, and therefore Surpanaka hated Ravan, and therefore Ravan sent her to Janmashtan to get her away, because she would cause trouble if she was there in Lanka. So anyway, Surpanaka came back after seeing how Ram and Lakshman had killed these 14,000 giants and all these other Rakshasas there. And in order to incite Ravan to kidnap Sita Devi, she described the physical or external, whatever, beautiful features, because Sita Devi is not physical or material, but she described the beautiful features of Sita Devi. And Ravan just became more and more and more lusty, and he couldn't control himself. And then he went to Uncle Marich a second time, and he said to Uncle Marich, "You got to help me." And Marich said, "No, it's going to be very dangerous." And Ravan said, "Well, if you don't help me, it's going to be very dangerous for you, because you have a choice. You can either be killed by me or by Ram." And so Marich was more intelligent. He understood, if I'm killed by Ram, I go back to Godhead. And if I'm killed by Ravan, God knows where I go. So Marich made the right decision. He took the form of a golden deer. So Ravan did something, being controlled by his lust. He actually succumbed to his lust, and that was the cause of his demise. Very important lesson for us. Kama rupena kontya dushprena lenacha. Thus one's intelligence is bewildered by one's eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and burns like fire. So that's the final lesson we have for you today. Thought it'd be interesting to hear the lessons from the Ramayana. And now we can actually turn things over to Aditya Narayan Prabhu, who is going to introduce us to the Abhishek. Okay? I want you to unmute yourself. Okay? You are online.
Can you hear me, ma'am? Look.
I can hear you.
Can everyone hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So I was just wanted to thank Maharaj for the wonderful class on lessons from Ramayana. And it's very interesting how Maharaj picked up like different points, starting with glorification of the holy name, and then the point about faith, loyalty, and then going on to the point of like deep point of separation. It was such a beautiful class. So thank you so much, Maharaj, for the wonderful class.
Thank you, Aditya.
This is online, but otherwise I would ask everyone to say loudly Hari Bol to Maharaj to thank him.
Well, everybody's on mute, so they can't say Haribo.
Yes. Okay, so thank you so much, Maharaj, for coming online from Fiji. We are going to have a wonderful Abhishek ceremony right now. So we had also mentioned in our email that for this period, since this coronavirus, and naturally, like there are not so many donations coming to the temple. So like we are continuing our service to our deities, the beloved deities, Shri Shri Radha Golokananda, having 5 artics every day, and then doing the offerings, including the Rajbhog and the morning offering. So we have like few offerings through the day and artics every day. So we are continuing our high standard of deity worship. So we are requesting everyone if you could contribute something towards the service of their Lordship Shri Shri Radha Golokananda, and particularly on this day, on the auspicious day of Ram Navami, very, very auspicious to give something to Shri Shri Radha Golokananda. So today actually we cooked a wonderful Rajbhog lunch for their Lordship. So if you like to offer that, that's $108. And the Abhishek is just going to happen. You can sponsor that entire wonderful Abhishek and receive like unlimited blessings of Lord Ram, and that's for $108. And also you can sponsor the Artik. So we have an Artik right now immediately after the Abhishek, and also we have the noon Artik. You can sponsor those Artiks for $51. And the flowers, so if you have seen the beautiful dressing of Shri Shri Radha Golokananda today, they have this beautiful garland. It's just like out of this coronavirus, wonderful garland offering for their Lordship. And so if you like to sponsor the flowers, this donations coming to the temple. So like we are continuing our service. So please consider making a having on this most 5 artics every day, pleasure of Shri Shri Radha Golokananda and Rajbhog and morning offering. So we have like, so if you like to make the day and artics every day, so we are continuing our high standard of Goloka 108@gmail.com, or you can log into our website something towards the service of their Lordship Shri Shri Radha Golokananda, and particularly on this day, on the auspicious day of Ram Navami, very, very auspicious to give something reach out to me or the Leela Shakti, and so can take a drink. So there are many ways in which we can actually receive your donation. Like if you're interested, please let us know. And the PayPal, there's a website, or you could personally reach out to us. Wonderful. So thank you so much. Blessing for kind donations, and also like I want to thank the devotees. Like when we sent out the email, many of you came forward to donate, just make a monthly donation to the temple. Especially during these times, it is so very precious to receive your donation. So thank you to those who have already come forward to make your donations to Shri Shri Radha Golokananda. We are very grateful for your kind donations. And if anyone would like to sponsor this wonderful Abhishek, please let us know. You can also message us. So thank you so much. And thank you so much, Maharaj, again for the wonderful lecture. Jai Shri Ram Chandra Bhagwan ki Jai. His Holiness Bhai Krishna Goswami Maharaj ki Jai. Srila
Prabhupada ki Jai.
Hare Krishna. So now we'll have the Abhishek ceremony, and Jagat Guru Prabhu is going to take us.
For those of you who want to see the Abhishek, go on to Mayapur TV for the new Goloka Temple. Those of you on Facebook, I'm going to shut Facebook off now, but it's Mayapur TV for the new Goloka Temple. Hillsborough Temple, Mayapur TV, okay.